Good evening. We're few in number here. Remember to pray for those that are not feeling well. Deborah is back tonight, so evidently feeling better. So we're glad for that. Okay, we are in Zephaniah, chapter 1, to begin with verse 14 in Zephaniah. Says, the great day of the Lord is near, it is near, and hasteth greatly, even the voice of the day of the Lord. The mighty man shall cry, the mighty man shall cry there bitterly. The day is a day of wrath, a day of trouble and distress, a day of wasteness, and desolation, a day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and thick darkness, a day of the trumpet and alarm against the fenced cities and against the high towers. And I will bring distresses upon men, and they shall walk like blind men, because they have sinned against the Lord, and their blood shall be poured out as dust, and their flesh as the dung. Neither their silver nor their gold shall be able to deliver them in the day of the Lord's wrath. But the whole land shall be devoured by the fire of his jealousy, for he shall make even a speedy riddance of all them that dwell in the land. So, talking about the day of the Lord, and as Brother Tom brought up last week, maybe we're looking at the day of the Lord's return. Ultimately, I think we are, but then also the day of judgment that was coming at that time. The Chaldeans were coming. The Scythians were a threat. So, anyone have any thoughts? It's pretty descriptive.
Maybe it applies more to the Chaldeans coming, like you said, God. And it's these things, it's going to be a bad day for everyone.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and I see your point being that God's people in the day of his wrath won't, right.
Well, people put a lot of stock in their silver and their gold, and it says that it won't be able to deliver them against the day of the Lord's wrath. It won't do them any good.
Well, and yeah, people with wealth, I suppose, over the ages have thought themselves exempt from the troubles of other people in our country as well as other countries. We hear about a two-tiered justice system, and I think it's really not a two-tiered justice system, but the people that have a lot of money and things like that are able to manipulate the system better than those that don't have it. That's an opinion I have.
Talking about the whole land being devoured by fire reminds us of how Peter says the earth is going to be destroyed.
Right. the earth will be destroyed by fire, right? And so maybe when God said he would not again destroy the earth with water, in many different incidences, fire is the course of his anger or the result of his wrath or anger at this time. But yeah, I think this could well apply to both times, both the current situation that was coming and the one that is yet to come. Okay, any other thoughts? Zephaniah chapter 2, verse number 1. Gather yourselves together, yea, gather together, O nation not desired, before the decree bring forth, before the day pass the chaff, before the day pass as the chaff, before the fierce anger of the Lord come upon you, before the day of the Lord's anger come upon you, seek ye the Lord, all ye meek of the earth. Seek ye the Lord, all ye meek of the earth, which have wrought his judgment. Seek righteousness, seek meekness. It may be ye shall be hid in the day of the Lord's anger. So the Lord telling those that worked righteousness, I guess we could call them the remnant, that there was hope even yet for them to seek the Lord. Seems to be what he's setting forth. Anyone have a thought about that? Something you'd like to mention?
I wonder how people responded and thought about it when it was delivered to them. Maybe should people respond today?
Yeah, when the message was delivered to them, yeah. From my thoughts this morning, I would say they probably thought he was overzealous, individual that, why pay attention to him? But we don't know what they really thought, but I would think that's certainly a possibility. People that over the years have been zealous for God have been ridiculed, and I would imagine he would be one of those. Any other thoughts? Okay, now we're going to go on to Gaza, which is, I guess, closer to along the Mediterranean there, and south, maybe of Caesarea, I don't know, but it's the land of the Philistines in any case. And so it says, for Gaza shall be forsaken, so it's not limited to Israel, the judgment that's coming. Gaza shall be forsaken, Ashkelon, desolation. They shall drive out Ashdod at the noonday, and Ekron shall be rooted up. Woe unto the inhabitants of the seacoast, the nation of the Cherethites. Woe, I read that, the next verse. The Cherethites, the word of the Lord is against you, O Canaan, the land of the Philistines. I will even destroy thee, that there shall be no inhabitant. So just those two verses, any thoughts on them? The Cherethites were a people they said came from, I think Cyprus, came originally from Cyprus into that area. And David's personal guard was made up of men of this people, of the Cherethite people. But he indicates that, that this whole land, that whole area of the Philistines, and he named a number of the cities, and by the way, you're probably aware, but those cities that he named were cities of the Philistines, Ashdod, Ekron, and he named a couple more, Ashkelon. These were all cities of the Philistines. And then when he says, "O Canaan," I think that probably he's broadening then the scope of it from just that area of the Philistines to a wider area, but maybe he is referring in particular with "O Canaan" to the land of the Philistines. I guess he says, "O Canaan, the land of the Philistines," so I guess that's what he's doing. But the land of Canaan originally, to me, went much higher and quite a bit further east.
By the promised land?
Yeah, this is in the area that Israel was to inherit, and we are to inherit. God's people are to inherit. Okay, so then he goes on, if there's no other thoughts, in verses 6 and 7 to say, and the seacoast shall be dwellings and cottages for shepherds and folds for flocks, and the coast shall be for the remnant of the house of Judah. They shall feed thereupon. In the houses of Ashkelon shall they lie down in the evening, for the Lord their God shall visit them and turn away their captivity. So that tells us that when he's talking here, that it's the same area. The area by the sea coast is where the Philistines, many of their cities were along the sea. And so he says that the remnant of God will, for a time, and I think maybe this mostly applies back then, at that time, for a time occupy the houses of the Philistines and stay therein. Any thoughts? Okay, let's read verses 8 through 10. I have heard the reproach of Moab and the revilings of the children of Ammon. Okay, so now if you look at your map in the Bible, when he's talking about Moab and the children of Ammon, we're dropping south and east. And this is, of course, both Moab and Ammon are related, distant relations of Israel's, through Abraham. So, but these are nations that also persecuted the Jews at different times. So, okay, then going on, he says, whereby, well, let me just read verse 8 again. I've heard the reproach of Moab and the revilings of the children of Ammon, whereby they have reproached my people and magnified themselves against their border. Therefore, as I live, saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, surely Moab shall be as Sodom, and the children of Ammon as Gomorrah, even the breeding of nettles and salt pits in perpetual desolation. The residue of my people shall spoil them, and the remnant of my people shall possess them. This shall they have for their pride. This shall they have for their pride, because they have reproached and magnified themselves against the people of the Lord of hosts. So he says, they will be as Sodom and Gomorrah, and the reason they will be as Sodom and Gomorrah is because they have reproached the people of God, the people of the Lord of hosts.
The Moabites and Ammonites are descendants of Lot.
Right, through one of his daughters, right.
I wonder if
The
that's-
Moab was both of them were,
One was one daughter. one
okay,
was
so
the
both
other.
of them are descendants of Lot.
And I wonder if that's why he compares it to Sodom and Gomorrah.
I don't know. He's really not comparing it, I don't think. What he's doing is saying that he's going to deal with them in the same way that he dealt with Sodom and Gomorrah, that they're going to end up a salt pit and a land that's completely desolate, unable to grow anything. Land of nettles. What is nettles? Stickers? Yeah. Stick.
Their skin turn it into a rash, itchy, burning rash. But they don't really have thorns on, it's just the fuzz that's on them that does it.
Yeah, they sting.
They grow all over Ohio.
Well,
Indiana.
it's a good place for them. Okay, any other thoughts there? You know, one thing that we're seeing, and we see it throughout the minor prophets and major prophets for that matter, is these nations that abused God's people will pay a price. There's a price to be paid. So not only are individuals judged, nations are judged. Okay, I have down here just verse 11 by itself, so let me see why. Let's read verse 11. The Lord will be terrible unto them, for he will famish all the gods of the earth, and men shall worship him, everyone from his place, even all the isles of the heathen. So this definitely looks forward to certainly to Christ, and maybe way beyond that, you know, to the return of Christ, but certainly I think to Christ, and maybe that's the word would be stop. But he says the Lord will be terrible, that is, cause fear and fright over these people. For he will famish all the gods of the earth. To famish is to make them thin, you know, and so he's going to make them of no consequence, I guess. All the gods of the earth. And men, he says, will worship God. So certainly they will at that time when Christ returns, and men will worship God. But you suppose, and here's a question, do you suppose he's talking about the coming of Christ when men, the heathen nations and men across the world have turned to the Lord? You know, could be simply talking about that. But I guess I actually look forward to the return of Christ and the time of great peace and worship of the Lord. Any thoughts? So now we're going to go way, way south. So if you stay on that, same side Ammon and Moab and go down to the very end of the Red Sea in your map, if your map goes that far down, and then as you're looking at your map to the left, I guess, you'll find Ethiopia. So, I didn't actually measure it and try to determine how far that is, but it's over 1,000 miles, maybe 1,500, I'm not sure. It's a long ways. So he says, ye Ethiopians also, ye shall be slain by my sword. Verse 12, verse 13. And he will stretch out his hand against the north and destroy Assyria, and will make Nineveh a desolation. So we've gone from clear down south to all the way up north and east of Jerusalem. So, and the Lord's talking about the destruction of these places because of, again, what they've done.
By war? Is it going to be by war or just through his power and just
Well,
famine or?
I would say, because through the time that his real just power destroys everything is after the millennial. So I would say it's by war. Yeah. Anyone has another thought? Okay, so we're talking now, he brings in Nineveh, he says, Assyria, and will make Nineveh a desolation and dry like a wilderness. So it's interesting how often Nineveh comes up in the prophets. Verse 14, the flock shall lie down in the midst of her, and all the beasts of the nations, both the cormorant, which is a pelican, and the biton, which is some type of bird, shall lodge in the upper lintels of it. Their voice shall sing in the windows. Desolation shall be in the thresholds, for he shall uncover the cedar work. This is the rejoicing city that dwelleth carelessly, that said in her heart, I am, and there is none beside me. How is she become a desolation? A place for beasts to lie down in. Everyone that passeth by her shall hiss and shall wag his hand. This is the great city of Nineveh as they pass by, which is now destroyed and is just destruction. Okay, any thoughts? Talks about Assyria. Nineveh was the capital city of Assyria, at least for some long period of time. The birds will inhabit it, and what this in the latter part, last phrase in verse 14, where he says, "For he shall uncover the cedar work." Evidently, they had finished. They had built their homes and palaces and things like that of cedar, and then covered them over. Is what it sounds like to me. So these will be uncovered and withering and destroyed. Calls it, this is the rejoicing city that dwelt carelessly and said, I am, and there is none beside me. So at this point, they understand that there is somebody beside them. Any thoughts? Okay, I think rather than going into chapter 3, it's time to quit, and so we'll start chapter 3 and finish it next week, I'm sure, and we'll go possibly next week into Haggai. So